The first painting I ever remember doing was a painting of a swan, and it was a white wax drawing on white paper of this swan, which I then painted over with poster paint, and it sort of emerged out of the page. And I tend to use animals as metaphors for people normally. I mean, swans in particular, I mean, they are monogamous and they're normally in pairs, and I think I'm aware of that, and that does feed into the work. I made a painting in 2006 called Venus as a Boy, which is after a Bjork song, which was a harlequin being carried away by a set of swans against this deep black background, and the swans sort of became a metaphor for maybe someone searching for love and kind of grabbing a passing swan. It had this sort of dark carnivalesque aesthetic, and it was an attempt to move into something absurd or sort of theatrical by nature. Before that, everyone had been nude. I was doing lots of paintings of flying nudes, and I decided I wanted to start using clothes, because I realised that clothes start to add more narrative, because, you know, as soon as you've got a clothed figure, it gives them a context and a kind of cultural location. So just some people do that. I for chill in his caresses, by the plainness of her manners, nay, the plainness of her dresses. Now I know her but in two. And this painting is called Nay, the Plainness of Her Dresses, Now I Know Her But in Two, which is a reference to the Tennyson poem Maud, but it also references this idea that Magdalene Spax is several things at once, and that she's there and not there, in that she is this vanishing artist who's vanished forever, and no one has seen her since, but because she has disappeared maybe into some sort of interstice, she isn't necessarily dead or alive, she's something else.
The Maud, so tender and true, as long as my life endures, I will owe a debt to you. Magdalene, Magdalene, the remarkable Magdalene, 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 the remarkable Magdalene. Spax, Spax.
Ladies and gentlemen, in precisely 5 minutes' time, I am due live on stage at the Sydney Opera House. So please excuse me as I disappear before your very eyes.
So this is The Miracle Maker, collector's edition, and it has a world exclusive, an eyewitness account of the final disappearance of Magdalene Spax, the world's greatest vanishing artist, and this is your reliable guide to the vast and unknowable universe. A decade after her mysterious disappearance, Magdalene Spax remains the greatest vanishing artist the world has ever seen. For what was to prove to be her swan song, she performed on 2 sides of the globe at the same time. 1, the Sydney Opera House, and 2, the Royal Opera House, London. At exactly 1:15 in the morning, Maud vanished from both venues at once and was never seen again. Immortality is a theme that I've it kind of emerged in the Magdalene Spax set of paintings, this idea of a character who's constantly re-emerging through culture. From the time of the Tennyson poem Maud, which was being quoted throughout culture and picked up in things like Alice in Wonderland, Come into the Garden, Maud, for the black bat night has flown. and then reappears literally as a reappearing and disappearing vanishing artist as Magdalene Spax in my paintings. There is this kind of notion of immortality which is attached to the arts, and I like the idea of pursuing this idea of trying to become immortal, because in a sense, kind of underlying things, that's supposedly what artists are trying to do. Sitting in Mr. P. Milne's Antiques and Curios on Elm Hill in Norwich, which is where I painted Anna Silvera at Elm Hill, which was my portrait of the singer who's a friend of mine.
I used the painting for an EP that was a precursor to my first album.
It was shortlisted for the Celeste Prize, which is an international art prize, so it was quite an important painting for me at the time. It was a very epic painting. It took 6 months to paint and many revisits to this place.
As I recall, we were in the shop and Will took a variety of pictures of things that interested him as well as me, sort of standing there. And I think that we were, you know, we had a sort of similar kind of image in mind.
Unlike sitting here now, and you're viewing this through a camera, which gives a static and kind of voyeuristic view of the space, I tried to achieve something that was more like the way that we really see. And the way that we really see is we scan a space, and unless you're set back at a great distance, you're always combining viewpoints. You're looking down at one thing and you're seeing it from overhead, and then you're looking ahead at a wall, and the wall is as face on as the floor was face on there. So there's this constant bending, almost like a fisheye perspective to the way that we really see a space.
I think we always felt that there were sort of strong similarities in what we were trying to do with our work. We both had this sort of fascination with stories and narrative, and a kind of fairy tale quality, I suppose. And we always really connected in that way, artistically.
Because this place is full of objects, it seemed a very natural thing to try and open that space up so that you could see as many of the objects as possible.
The magical reality aspects of my work come through this sort of interest in fairy tales, and the way that this kind of narrative and these archetypal figures can tap into something that a more personal tale can't. I think there's a way that those stories filter into the sort of human consciousness that is very powerful, and I think that's something that Will does as well with his work.
But I'm interested in creating something that's, in terms of this idea of magical realism, there's this notion of kind of the extraordinary in the everyday, and actually the fact that the way we really see is possibly more extraordinary than people realise. And you know, we've got used to looking at photographs and thinking that they represent reality, when in some ways a painting can perhaps do a better, or at least a different job of that.
I felt the shop was a very natural hunting ground for Will's imagery, you know, and also for my aesthetic as well.
And I planted various objects in the background to aid the narrative of the painting, and added lots of things after my initial photos were taken. I kind of added a picture of a child that was perhaps her youth. There's a lot of references in her music to European history and the kind of fairy tales and folklore, so it seemed appropriate to have all these kind of loaded narrative historical objects around her, and you know, I thought about which ones might actually imply more of a story than others. Yeah, it's really stimulating. And I think art is a lot about stimulus and that kind of sending people on a journey, and there's a lot of journeys contained in this room, aren't there? But also, obviously, it's nice to actually have James as a model who is a taxidermist and has a relationship to these kind of objects. I'm going to photograph the chair with James on the chair in situ, so I know the lighting is going to be kind of accurate. And then I'm going to photograph just the space without the chair, so that I get a sense of how things sit.
There you go. That's a pretty one. If you've ever seen this, is the first encyclopedia I got. There we go.
Oh wow!
An encyclopedia of things that never were.
Because I've done paintings in this space before, I know how I'm going to work the background and things. But it will change. I mean, some things will be added or subtracted, and sort of try draping yourself across
Okay.
the space, something like that.
Not that. You're really selling that to me. That looks so comfortable. Alright, let's give it a go.
I think, I'll tell you what, I'm going to push the chair up a bit higher.
Right. Yeah, that might be easy.
Now you can see why I wanted to use this chair.
Yeah. Okay.
So, are you okay?
Yep.
Maybe, let's see how you're looking. You look. Do you mind dropping your arms down, resting them?
Yeah.
I think it would be good if you were sitting slightly further back on the chair.
Look, it's about falling.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Let's
see if I can shuffle a bit.
Oh, that's perfect. That's lovely. Do you want to sit up for a moment? Because I've got to be able to do anything for a minute. Oh, that's nice.
Beautiful.
Might as well take full advantage of them. I'll drop that down a bit. Yep. Go for it. That's lovely. Whoa. Actually, I might. If you can take like that.
Did you get the shot?
Did you get that? That was breakdancing.
And I'm gonna. If you can. Oh, wait a minute, I'll have to get this. See if I can get this set up. The thing is, I know it's quite uncomfortable doing that from previous. I've done it myself before.
Yeah?
Yeah. So we might have you.
Right.
Oh, let's see how this is working out. I think I'm going to have you a bit more kind of towards me this time. That's good. Now, could you look towards me? And maybe look, kind of bring your head up. Yep, that's nice. So do you want to put that in your mouth? Like that. Take a good bite. Yep. Now, you're going to look towards me. No. Yep. Look up more. As much as you can. Yep. That's great. Do you mind moving the chair? Just so that I can get another shot of the background. I think we've probably got enough shots of this now. There's some some really nice ones. I'll just get some more of the space.
So when you prep for a job like this, Will, when you walk away from here today, is your mind on this as you go home? Do you think about the images? Or?
I will, but I've also drawn 7 parrots coming out of a steam train recently, and so I'm giving some thought to those at the moment.
Okay.
And I've drawn. Yeah, I've got a few things on my mind.
So they'll work around. Sort of.
Yeah, I kind of digest things. I mean, I will go through these and just sort of tinker with them, and I'll probably collage together about 5 or 6 different images and then decide on one of those. So I mean, there's a lot of work that never gets made. Yeah. I don't like to do more than one version of the same thing unless I do it in a very different way.
Plus he's digging into my arm.
mean, I'm interested in magical realism. I love writers like Angela Carter. The theatricality and this kind of sense of things being staged within my work is a means for saying that this maybe isn't quite as absurd as you think it is, because it could just be a play.
Do you mind looking up for a moment? So if you look up at the ceiling a bit, yeah, like you are, and then look at me whilst looking like that. Yeah, and then maybe your head across slightly more that way, but looking down at the camera. And then across here slightly more.
Looking.
Think you're the Queen, and you're not impressed.
Okay.
Get your shots.
Yeah, the light isn't quite like I'd like it, but actually it's pretty good. I'm sure there's one there I can use. Yeah, actually they've come out nicely. Yeah, there's some nice shots there.
Good. So this is one of the images from the Curiosity Shop, and I have cropped it, obviously. It's going to be on a square canvas, and I've added this clock for a bit of pictorial balance and interest, and it sort of adds a bit of time and place to the whole thing. And I'm sort of working that into a painting at the moment, which I started quite loosely for me, and I'm figuring it out as I go along, really. I mean, quite often I don't really know what I'm doing. I do one thing, and if it doesn't work, I try something else. I tend to work with very, very thin paint for the glazes, so I have to keep it quite flat. I do like to know the models, at least to some extent. At least enough to know whether I find them intriguing or not. But I'll normally, if I take 100 shots, there'll only be a few that I'll want to use. And sometimes I'll collage them together, or sometimes I'll just kind of, as I say, crop one down until I've got something that I'm happy with. But I do regard the photos as a starting point. Yeah, there is a certain stream of consciousness. There's also a lot of pondering. There's a mix of intuition and a lot of thinking time in an image. And that's to do with thinking about the kind of mood that you're looking for, but it's also to do with literally problem solving. There's a lot of problem solving in painting and thinking about how you can actually achieve a certain look. I mean, James, the model here, has grown up with this owl, and I rather, I think his relationship with the animal is quite interesting. He was quite reluctant to pose with it, and I always like to get models to do things that they don't want to do, because I figure then I'm onto something different. I'm not sure I'm going to do a lot more to the hat. I actually quite like the sort of looseness of it, and I think when everything else is very clear, it's odd, once certain bits have a strong degree of clarity, the rest of it suddenly seems clearer as well. I'd say it pretty much is finished. I've just been adding a bit more red, so I'm going to purpley tones to warm up the skin a bit more. I've kind of repainted the skin a few times. This little plaque at the top is says surgeon. So that's it says surgeon in Japanese script, which is partly a link to a previous painting which says universe of the vast and unknowable in Japanese script. And I like the idea of this kind of continuing sort of ambiguous use of text. I think there's something nice about reducing text to an aesthetic, which as soon as you can't read it, which I certainly can't, it is, but at the same time it gives it a slightly more hidden meaning and changes perhaps the meaning slightly of what's going on here. In that the guy is an animal surgeon of a sort, in that he's a taxidermist. I am pleased with it. I think James had quite an intense and guarded expression, and I think I've managed to catch that. and I think that that lends a degree of mystery to the work. It is important to me that the work is seen, so I will need to send it on a journey for that to happen, and that journey normally is somebody in the end buying the work and putting it in their home. It's something that I worry about, because in a sense you're making them the custodians of the work, and it's kind of their job to look after it then. And that's one reason for making sure people do pay for the work, because that way they will value it, hopefully. And I think possibly my worst nightmare is that something that I've toiled over for months will at some point in the future end up in someone's garage going mouldy. It's amazing. Loads and loads of visual stimulation, and I think what I like is there's loads and loads of very absurd replicas of things, which I think when they're painted you won't really be able to tell whether they're kind of caricatures or what they are really. But sometimes I do work from photos. I tend to work from a large collection of photos that I'll collage together, but even from a photograph, you're sort of spending all that time looking at someone, you start to sort of read more into their character and also their face. You always feel like you're back to square one when you start painting a new person's face. That's good. This picture's probably going on display in a gallery in Chelsea. So I've actually made some of the posters advertise Houdini's reappearance in Chelsea. This was the original source image, and you can see that, I mean, there's a lot of work still to go on it, but it's diverged from this quite a lot. So one of the things I was enjoying with the last painting was the decorative elements to it, I guess, and I've gone for a very sort of psychedelic, almost slightly 1980s computer game sort of feel to it. I mean, it's very obviously contrived as an image, and it doesn't bother me, but it is sort of, I mean, it is somebody seated sort of for the viewer, I guess. I would say I'm at least 3/4 of the way through it. It's always quite hard to tell. I know that this is painted, most of it's painted, other than the skin and the hair. But once I've finished it in that sense, I then go back and start adding kind of light effects and thinking about the spatial relationships and how they will be affected by the tone and atmospherics and all those sorts of things. I've really enjoyed doing this so far. It's totally deviated in many ways from the original image. There's compositional focus and there's psychological focus within an image, which is another aspect of the composition alongside the aesthetics, and it's important to try and balance the areas of interest. As I paint on top of this, because it's going to be sealed again and worked over in oil, all of that will become slightly lost and ambiguous, and for lack of a less pretentious phrase, lends a degree of ontological ambiguity to the process, because people will hopefully look at the painting and not really be able to figure out how certain marks and textures and aspects to the surface were made. Just having a quick look at the painting in a mirror, just to get a sense of how it's looking. I mean, you sort of lose objectivity after a while when you've been painting something for several weeks, and this is a way of viewing it slightly afresh. I mean, getting a sense of whether it's sort of balancing or not, but actually the thing it's telling me most about is the tonal values on this, and I can't really make them out in front of me, but I can see they are sort of working when I look at this, but I can see that I could develop them a little bit.
He will hold you when his passion shall expand his novel force. Something better than a dog, a little dearer than its horse. Oh, my cousin, shallow-hearted, oh, my Amy, my no more.
I don't see Will as someone who's here today, gone tomorrow. we will see Will on the international stage.
When you have an exhibition, Will, who gets the choice of where things go? Is it you normally or a gallery?
When there's a show, it tends to be a show like this. It's sort of a collaboration, really, between the curator and the artist. So a bit of both. There's quite a variety of work in this show, so I tried to order it thematically to some extent and keep the work in collections so that they and separate really different work into different rooms. I've recently done a picture of someone holding a rabbit whilst devouring some grapes ravenously, which is called cornucopia. This one is actually quite old, but I put a hole through the canvas, so I've re-stretched it with a smaller canvas. I don't know if this sort of thing really matters. It just makes me feel better. I've taken a little bit more care with them.
When I've posed for some of the characters in his paintings, I feel a little bit like, it's not really me, and I'm a bit uncomfortable with the character that's being portrayed.
I don't think she likes the idea of people reading things into her through my images.
So although I'm sort of anonymous in the paintings, it's really difficult when people approach me at his openings and kind of ask me about being the model, because I'd rather they didn't, really.
I remember growing up surrounded by religious iconography. And I think that there is this sort of Baroque darkness in a lot of my work, which curiously you find in your average religious middle class home. There'll be all these kind of pictures of bunny rabbits and things, and then a guy being crucified in the corner, and people don't seem to make the connection. But this interest in kind of transcendentalism perhaps, and darkness, and some kind of fear of human brutality is something that is inherently there in religious iconography, and perhaps my work is dealing with those things in another way.
For chilling his caresses, by the plainness of her manners, nay, the plainness of her dresses. Now I know her but in two. For chilling his caresses, by the plainness of her manners, nay, the plainness of her dresses. Now I know her but in two. For Maud so tender and true, as long as my life endures, I will owe a debt to you, Magdalene, Magdalene, the remarkable Magdalene Sparks. Garden Maud.
Dare I say it, you might have had a senior moment.
I knew you were going to say that.
listening to that song.